Hi, welcome to Digital Discussion on Portfolios for Technical Theater. I'm Mandy Heath. I am the chair of the Rocky Mountain region, and my guest today is my secretary, Connor Sullivan, who will be presenting this discussion for you all. I hope you enjoy it. Please let us know if you have any questions or concerns along the way. Go ahead, Connor, take it away.
Thanks so much, Mandy. Yeah, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining me today to talk about portfolios. Like Mandy said, my name's Connor Sullivan. I use he, him pronouns, and I serve as the secretary for USITT Rocky Mountain. If you don't know what we are, what USITT is, what the regional section is, we work within our region, so that's the states of Colorado and Wyoming, to promote the mission of the broader national organization, that being to advance technical theater as an art, craft, and profession. So join us for all of our events. We will have links at the end of this slideshow. These slides that I'm sharing today and a recording of this entire digital discussion will be available on YouTube. So check our link tree in a couple months, slash maybe after conference TBD. A little bit about me in general. I am a costume designer and technician by trade, working in live theater and opera primarily. I am also the faculty for costume design and technology here at MSU Denver in Denver, Colorado. And as an educator, I'm always trying to get my students jobs. We all want jobs. This is a professional organization. That's why we are here. And to me, the best way to get into that interview room is having engaging, organized, and cohesive materials. These materials are usually a resume, a cover letter, and a portfolio. If you want to know more about resumes, that's a whole nother topic, a whole nother digital discussion, even. And there's a link to that on our YouTube page, which will be on the link tree. Special thanks to Emily Chancellor and Brian Kelly, who let me use their slides and adapt them from a similar presentation they did geared towards high school students. And without further ado, let's talk about portfolios. Nope. There we go. Okay, so what is a portfolio? In simple-ish terms, it is a curated and organized collection of photographs, documents, and explanatory text that serve to communicate your applicable experience and skill to potential employers and other collaborators. Keywords there being curated and organized. So it should not just be a random collection of all of the photographs of all of your work. It has to be selected by you to show the best version of yourself as a technician, designer, whatever job you're trying to get hired for. That resume and the cover letter, they say a lot about you, but your portfolio demonstrates what your actual result is and what you're actually capable of in terms of artistic and technical product. The resume can say a lot. It can show all of your experience, your education, your qualifications. Cover letters are a great way to show your personality, to make an argument about why you are the best person for the job. But anybody can say on their resume that they are an experienced tailor, a skilled scenic painter, whatever it may be. Pictures speak a thousand words, and I, as a hiring manager, am able to analyze in a lot more detail what someone's capable of and if they will be successful in the position based on their portfolio more than anything. Thing to note, portfolio is a living document. What I mean by that is you will keep adding to it, you'll take things away as you get stronger work, and keep refining that document for the rest of your career. Big caveat. Peggy had a similar caveat in her session about resumes and cover letters. The caveat is discussing portfolio design, format, presentation conventions is an inherently subjective exercise. A lot of things are specific to discipline, can be even specific to region. For example, the term draper is used for pattern maker in a lot of parts of the country. Some parts of the country use the word cutter pretty exclusively. So you'll see both. And it's not that one is right or wrong, they're just different. People have a lot of opinions, me very much included, and I believe that the advice I am sharing today is sound advice based on my experience as a professional and as an occasional hiring manager, but it is not the only advice. So ask the people in your world, ask your professors, ask your mentors, ask your colleagues. Getting lots of opinions is a great thing. What matters, I think, the most is that you believe that your portfolio does the best possible job it can at representing the quality of your work and the extent of your skill. If you don't believe in your portfolio, I'm not going to believe in it either. So keep it in mind. Lots of caveats, lots of opinions. There's no one right way to do anything in the theater. Tell it to my classes all the time. Lots of ways to get to the solution you need. Um, will vary based on your discipline and you as an individual. Okay, in terms of format, this is a little bit interesting because it's certainly changed a lot over the past 50 years. But thinking about the context in which we would be asked to share or send a portfolio, typically as a part of job applications, perhaps if you are cold emailing people, cold emailing is just reaching out to an organization without them having posted a position, to see about potential opportunities. Job interviews, obviously, following job applications, grad school interviews along those same lines. But in general, in the 21st century, we are all working on computers. And so a digital portfolio has been the standard for at least 10 years, probably closer to 20 at this point. Um, Slideshow formats are the most functional option, in my opinion. We'll come back to physical portfolios in a minute. They can accommodate most file formats, so you can have JPEG, PNG, GIF, like anything you want. You can embed videos into it. You can have audio playing within your slides, very important for our sound designers. In general, it's a simple but powerful tool. There are certainly other options. I have a dear friend and colleague that uses Adobe InDesign exclusively because it provides her a lot of really specific control. The downsides being it's not quite as accessible if you don't know that software. It doesn't super matter what you use, it just has to be functional. The other thing that I like about PowerPoint, Sheets, some sort of software like that, super easy to organize things, to edit things, to go in really quick, add a new slide, add new pictures, and to export in whatever format you might need. Always, 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 always export your file as a PDF and review it in a great amount of detail before you send your portfolio out. The reason for this is that a lot can go wrong in getting some sort of document from PowerPoint onto somebody else's computer. Your format in terms of how wide the screen is, so the aspect ratio, might be different. And so your slides might have really weird spacing. You might find certain photo types don't load on certain devices or certain versions of PowerPoint. And so a PDF is something that can allow you to just take all that guesswork out of the way, so that you know when anyone opens your portfolio on any device, whether it's my laptop, whether I open it on my phone, I am seeing exactly what you intended. In terms of fonts, background, and spacing, clean is the word I would use. I would recommend a sans serif font like Calibri. A neutral background. I'm very opinionated about backgrounds. Should be neutral, should not be super colorful, should not be patterned. I personally am not a fan of a solid black background or a solid white background. The reason for that, let me go back a slide. Very, very often we have darker colors. Yeah, that's more purple. But a lot of theater production photos end in black. And so if your background is also black, it's really difficult to differentiate where your photo ends and where your background starts. Ways you can get around it, including putting frames around your photos, lots of settings for that that we won't get into today. With stark white, I feel similarly, just because it's rough on the eyes. Like this I have here, this very, very, very muted gray. It's just so much more pleasant to look at. Um, Okay. In terms of physical portfolios, this used to be something that every technician designer was expected to have, carry with them. Can be really helpful and cool in a lot of ways to have those hands-on things, the physical products of your work. Samples for me as a costumer, like having actual costumes to show can be lovely. Um, there are a lot of downsides. Typically, you'd only have one copy because you only have your originals. And if you lose that copy, you're kind of out of luck. It can be helpful to have a high quality, potentially bound printout of your digital portfolio to reference in some sort of interview context. There are still also very specific contexts in which a physical portfolio is expected. So I'm thinking about IRDAs for one thing. Potentially, depending on what sort of grad school you are going to, they might expect you every semester to have a physical portfolio exhibition. But in general, no one these days, when they're hiring you for a job, is expecting you to come in with your giant leather binder full of all of your physical work. You should still be showing that work, but you should do it by taking high quality scans slash high quality photographs that are angled properly and uploading them into a digital format. Okay. Next. Should I have a website? My students ask me this question a lot. They're like, well, why do I have to do all of this and make this whole slideshow if I have my website? My website's great. You should absolutely have a website. I think you're silly if you don't. It is a vital marketing tool in this day and age, and it's really great to introduce people to your work. What I love about my website is ConnorSullivanCostumes.com. Check me out. It can be more comprehensive. In fact, is almost always more comprehensive unless you're just starting out in your career because we are not bound by length. If I were to go through every page on my website in an interview, we'd be there for hours. Not effective. And so what I use it as is a repository of all of my work across all of the things I've done in my career. And then for individual interviews and things, I will tweak, customize certain slides to suit that particular position. It's not suitable using a website as a substitute for a linear presentation style portfolio. The primary reason being you lack that narrative control ability. Remember, you are trying to sell yourself and your abilities, and just having a web page, you give your audience a zillion options about where they want to click. You should be very intentional about what work you are showing and what order you are showing it in. Ba-dum-ba-dum. In terms of some conventions in general, if you are going the website route, which you should have in addition to your regular portfolio, keeping domains simple, easily typable, and relevant should probably include your name. Um, ConnorSullivan.com is not available and has never been. I've been looking for over 15 years now. So for me, it's ConnorSullivanCostumes.com. Highly recommend you stick with that .com only. There's a lot of other options out there. However, any other ending, any other suffix on that is going to make your web page appear much, much, much lower in any search result. There's a lot behind that that goes into search engine optimization, which we won't get into today, but keep that in mind. Um, I pay less than $10 a year for my domain, and it is well worth the cost versus um, students will typically have like connorsullivan.wix.com, and it's not like that's horrible if you truly are in a pinch and you can't afford that. Nothing inherently wrong with that, but the level of professionalism between that and the $10 custom domain is massive. In terms of portfolio hosting, I recently transitioned to Google Sites, which I love because it integrates into Google Drive and it's really easy to manage all of my photos and things. Adobe Portfolio, I've also heard highly recommended, and Carbon Made. In parentheses, Squarespace and Wix are probably the two most popular web-based website builders, not necessarily designed specifically for portfolios. I did used to use Wix. I will never go back. Don't gotta get into it today because there's not time, but there's a lot of clunkiness with Wix and Squarespace because they are designed to do a lot of things. Like they're designed for e-commerce. They're designed to do things far beyond the scope of what you're trying to do with your website. Um, in terms of domain name registrars, those are the people that can give you those custom domains. I use Porkbun. Cloudflare is also great. GoDaddy is the most common and registers the most domains by volume, but also have some shadier business practices. So, giving you all the options, do with that what you will. Great. Okay, now getting into the nuts and bolts of what your portfolio should look like. Some fundamental elements in every slide, well, every section in your portfolio that's talking about a specific show. On occasion, that can turn into more than one slide. You should have photographs. Production photographs is typically where you're starting off. Progress photos as well, which we'll talk about what those look like. You're going to want the title of your production slash project. So it's usually the show title if it's a realized piece. It could be costume construction class project if you're sharing something from class. Caveat for the students out there, you can absolutely put all of your classwork in your portfolio if you are still building up your professional credits. There is zero shame in that. Everybody who works in theater now had student work on their portfolio at one point. You should have your role on the set production, what you did, the work you completed, and you should have those production credits, including at minimum the design team and the photographer. What does this all look like? We have our title. And this is where my friends from the scenic department come in and lending me their slides to show you a bit of a process outside of my rather specific costume expertise area. So in theory, I'm working on Natasha Pierre ... as the head rigger and carpenter. I am going to credit the people that worked on this production with me. Peggy says this in resumes too. Every name in your portfolio is a chance for you to make a connection. I might be scrolling through a portfolio and see a name like, oh, that's the lighting designer I worked with 10 years ago at this one place. I wonder how they're doing. Maybe I'll reach out and see how they're feeling about this person. What Peggy actually said, every name in your portfolio is a reference. Beyond your official three references that you're asked to submit, anyone you're listing here can help you get a job. So keep that in mind. You'll want your director pretty much universally for realized things. You'll always want your photographer, always, 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 if you're showing photos. Don't need to credit your own progress photos, but all production photos should be credited. You should have, I think, at least the scenic costume, lighting, and sound designers. I've heard arguments made that do we need to include the sound designer because you're not showing the visual? When you look at this picture, you obviously see set, you see costume, you see lights, and it just feels exclusionary and mean to cut sound out at this point to me. And also, it's an uneven number, so it doesn't make me happy format wise.
There's a
Um,
whole microphone in the bottom corner of that. I'm
that's so true. That's a great point, Mandy.
just
There
saying.
is a whole microphone.
It does seem
Sound
really
does have
mean to
physical
leave them
elements.
out for when just because you can't hear the photo. Like, no,
Yeah,
put them in.
nope, I agree. And then depending on your specialty and what you do within the theater world, you might slash probably should add other people. For instance, as a costume designer, I am always going to include the hair and makeup designer because they're a big part of my finished product. So if I didn't do that work myself, I want to make sure that that is appropriately credited. If I had an assistant or associate designer, I would certainly include that individual. If I'm working as a technician, I'll want to include usually my supervisor. So if I'm working as a stitcher, who my draper was, if I'm working as an electrician, who my lead electrician was, slash your designer as well, but that should already be in there. So tailor it to what you think is important to your discipline and the project. And I think that having a couple too many credits is always better than leaving people off, personally. Okay. Dum-ba-dum-ba-dum. Process photos slash progress photos, but they're showing more than just the progress you're making. They're showing the specific process steps that you take in your work as a theater designer slash technician. These photographs are helping to tell a story and demonstrate all of those progressive steps you took along the way to achieve that product. They are highlighting your skills and showing that your process is strong in addition to the product you're creating. Lots of people create beautiful product. Maybe their process isn't as strong. You can prove you have a strong process through these photos. Always, always, always. Mandy, can you see that little thing down here? The green pencil? It's in my way. It's not great.
Ah, yes,
Okay,
I
great.
can see.
No, never mind. We'll move on.
Okay.
Um, Always remind yourself, take lots of photos. I sometimes will put like reminders in my calendar when I'll be working on a project for 10 hours in a day. Like, don't forget to photograph that step before you close the lining, and you'll never be able to see inside the garment again.
Hmm.
Is a constant refrain when I'm teaching classes to photograph your work, take photos. Because unfortunately, there's not a great way you can go back, right? Once the set is painted, you can't take the paint off and repaint it. You can take certain photos of like, say close-up sewing shots after the fact, but I can't take a photo of a garment when I'm cutting it out after it's already been on stage, right? Because it's already together.
What I really
Um,
like about those photos, can I
yeah.
interrupt you for a second? What I love about these photos is that the production photo had the finished product in the picture. Yep, there it
Hmm.
is in the back. And then what this is a wide shot before the wall goes up. And then a close-up shot to pair with it so that you can actually see the detailing of what it was made out
Yeah.
of.
It,
So like taking the time to very clearly go upstairs into the upper level of the house and take this photo was a really wise choice. And this is a great set of photos to have in a portfolio.
yeah. They really give so much information about what it looked like. Because, yeah, like Mandy's saying, you see the finished product, it's beautiful, but what actually is that? It's just like little dots of something back there. I don't really know. The
It's
close-ups
salad
really
bowls.
are much more informative. That's the secret. Secret's always salad bowls.
The secret of salad bowls. Yeah. Which is nice. It's really fun for people to see that. It's fun to see how the entire thing is constructed,
Hmm.
and how that created that wall back
Yeah.
there.
Oh, yeah. Very, very helpful. And we'll show you what those all look like on the same slide in just a moment. Some bad examples of portfolio photos. In general, a photo of you working is not the best thing because you're trying to sell the work itself, not you as an individual. If you show me that you have made this thing, I don't necessarily need to see a picture of you with the saw or at the sewing machine. A lot of reasons for that. Same reason that technicians and designers should not be putting their headshot on resumes. We're going to leave that firmly in the world of performers and let our work speak first and foremost. Um, so that's the big note about this slide, but also just focus photos, photos that are framed well, high quality. We're really fortunate these days that our phones, like I have three insane super high megapixel cameras in this little device in my pocket. There was a time that you had to own a separate camera to be able to take really nice photos. So consider yourself lucky there. Some good examples of portfolio pictures. What I love here is it's showing a very, very clear process from the very initial build to what it looked like, kind of roughly put together without any paint or detail, to what the whole unit looks like with all of the paint, all the detail, all the trim, all the foliage, all of the things. Just seeing this one photo on the right, okay, yeah, cool. You made a tree. I don't know how you made that. Seeing the techniques you use to make the tree tells us a lot more.
It also shows an extra one too. It also shows in the background a very nicely organized shop,
It sure does. Shout
which
out
is
to
also
Emily
nice,
Chancellor.
right?
Very well organized paint deck. Yeah.
But also something to keep in mind if when you're taking a process photo, if your background is super sloppy, people will pick up on that.
Yep. Absolutely.
So take the time to take the thing you're working on and move it to a prettier place.
Hmm. This is important. I always tell people take the dress form to the hallway where there's a clean wall because there is not a single corner of this costume shop where there's not things. Not always like dirty or weird or off-putting things, but just bright things, colorful things, things that draw focus from what you're actually trying to show off. Um, the power of the crop. So, this photo, which we love, was actually super, super zoomed out to begin with. And this is one of the advantage of having a high quality photo on and high quality cameras on our phones is we can crop photos to remove any extraneous information, highlight what we're actually trying to show. If I look at this first photo on the left, I'm like, okay, what are you showing me? Are you showing me the build of these platforms at the front of the stage? Are you showing me the lights you hung? Are you showing me, like, I have no idea. But we're trying to show the light wall. And so if we frame that and crop it in a way that's appropriate, things will be much clearer to whoever's looking at your work. The other thing that I would recommend, this was not my portfolio, so neither here nor there, you could also potentially rotate this photo slightly to make it look more aligned as a square if that is more aesthetically pleasing for you. There are several ways to do that rotation and not have it be at an angle to keep it within that square bounding box that we are expecting. Um, in terms of editing in general, there are hot takes in the world about this. Um, what I'm going to say is that you should never be altering reality. You should never be creating new realities that never happened. However, functional adjustments to things like exposure, brightness, etc., are sometimes advisable. Why I'm saying that, here, I'm going to show you a great example. Nope, can't exit it. I was going to show you the lighting with the fancy Apple lighting versus not and what it does in terms of camera settings in showing my face. But same thing applies to all of your portfolio photos. There's lots of settings you can play around with, and it's very, very easy to accidentally take a photo that is underexposed and does not show your work very well. And it would be really sad if that's the only photo to get rid of it just for that when it's super easy to edit. And you're not changing anything about the reality. So to me, that's fine. Mandy?
Yeah, the act of taking a photo in general, to me is a you're already putting a layer on something that existed in
Hmm.
real life. The camera sees things different than our eyes.
Yep.
And so a lot of times, like in lighting world, one of the things that happens is sometimes psychs can come out a really weird color.
Mm.
I have no problem with altering a little adjustment to make it what it looked like in real life.
Yep.
Because depending on the settings you can put, like I could put some wacky settings on my camera and make it completely
Oh,
different
yeah.
from reality. So just the mere taking of a photo is already altering the
Hmm.
experience. It's kind
Hmm.
of like that when something is viewed, does observation change it kind of
Yeah.
thing.
You know what it's like? The fact that every photo you've ever seen of the Northern Lights is super
Yeah,
long exposure and it never ever actually looks like
it
that.
never actually looks like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as long
Yeah.
as you are being true to the art, I have no problem
Yeah.
with minor adjustments, exposure adjustments. Like also there could be a really awesome costume, but it's happening in a very dark moment. Like we want to be able to see it. We
Bump
still
the
need to see
brightness
the
up.
work.
Do
Like it's
it.
okay.
Yeah. Um, Wonderful, Mandy. The next bullet point I put in there based on conversations with you anyway. I said color balance is another thing that you could be adjusting. That gets a little crazier. So if you ever want Mandy to talk to you about Lightroom, she's here. And to account
So good at
for
Lightroom.
exactly what Mandy just said, accounting for the disparity between the camera and the human eye. Cameras are not eyes. Cameras are all designed in different ways. They process images in different ways, and our eyes are infinitely more complex. And even as a costumer, there's times I'll get a photo back and I'm like, that's not the color of that dress. That's not what the color it was on the rack. That's not the color it was on the stage. I was there many times. And so for me, I would rather my work be true to the actual reality. And it's weird to think about, but the best way to do that is by editing the photo even though it feels like you're changing something, it's actually letting your audience see more realistically what the thing looked like. Great. Let's add these on here. This is what things are going to look like when you have your finished photo, your credits that we talked about, along with your progress photos. And at this point, you'll also want to be incorporating some little bits of text here and there. Small bullet points can really help clarify what you're showing. Always good to use proper technical terms. There almost always in technical theater, there are right terms and there are wrong terms. And the professionals that are interviewing you will flag that kind of thing immediately. Using the right terms shows that you know what you did and you could repeat it slash reproduce it. Keeping your explanation short and to the point is great. I'm personally not good at this, as we can tell by these oftentimes text-heavy slides, but you can always elaborate if an interviewer asks. And so trying to edit yourself and keep the focus on your photos and have the text be a supplement should be the goal. All right. That example of text. I love this slide. Example. This was my first experience with metalwork! Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. I think I did okay, but I can do better work now. This project was a rotating spiral staircase that the actors walked up and down, that's what staircases are, and it could spin at the same time. It had pneumatic brakes in it and was made out of OSB and metal and had a trapdoor at the top so technicians could crawl in every day and fill the tank for the pneumatic brakes. I learned a lot about cutting angles on a steel structure and was very happy about the experience. It was also my first time ever using a MIG welder.
The only
Okay,
thing
yeah, great.
missing is like a smiley face emoji.
Exactly. So a few things with this. A, it's just too long. A lot of run-on sentences, lots of really enthusiastic punctuation. Frankly, I don't care if you were happy in your process. Great. But that's not really the point of what you're trying to show with your slides. You're trying to show what you did and what your skills are. An example of a much better text, bullet points are great. Used a tube ruler to curve the 1 by 1 inch box tube. Cut and prepared steel for welding the rotating spiral staircase together. Added access door and MIG welded a ladder to the top of the platform for access to pneumatic brakes and LED tape. So here
Lovely.
it's like, if I say, this is my first time using a MIG welder, I'm like, oh, well, I don't want this guy welding anything. If I see added access door and MIG welded a ladder, I'm like, oh, great, this guy knows how to do that. Um, Never underestimate the importance of professional language in this sort of context. I know that's kind of a loaded term for various reasons, but at the end of the day, the people that are looking at your portfolio have certain expectations about the way you're speaking about your work and the way you are presenting your work. If you're serious about having a continuous career in the theater, you kind of have to learn how to speak that language, for lack of a better term. Okay, the next few slides, I have some various examples from colleagues, students, etc. of portfolios. This one's marred slightly by the top left box, but in general, when you're organizing your slideshow, you're going to want to start, like I've said, clean layout, easy to navigate. In terms of how you should group your work, I think grouping by type is really helpful. So if you are a again, multidisciplinary person applying to a job that is encompassing different areas, or if you're applying to a more specific job, but you're not far along enough in your career journey to have a whole portfolio specifically for that area, you should include enough work to show the scope of your abilities, and then grouping within that by subspecialty. And so for me, if I'm doing an interview for a costume design position, I'm going to put my design work first, obviously. I'll probably put a little bit of costume technology work in there as well. The reason I do that is to show that I know how to make clothes as well, not just tell other people how to make them. Shows that I can collaborate and have that knowledge base as a designer. Might include a slide showing some paperwork just to show that I'm an organized person that knows the paperwork convention standards, etc., etc. There were times when there was hair and makeup work in my portfolio, when there was more costume crafts work in my portfolio. I don't actively go out for hair and makeup jobs or costume craft jobs nowadays, and so some of that stuff is still on my website just because good things for people to see. Very rarely have I had an opportunity to use it in a true portfolio. Keeping it consistent, keeping it organized. That's what you should keep in mind. Can also group by show if you did multiple roles on one show, but I feel those situations are relatively rare. Again, short descriptions explaining what's happening and what we're looking at is helpful. Keep in mind, there are many occasions for instance, when I first applied to my job at MSU Denver, there were 6 people interviewing me. Only one of those person knew anything about costumes. Not anything. They knew some things about costumes, but very often the people you were interviewing with might not all be specialists in your area. And so, for me, I need that explanation, or I'm not going to know what you're talking about if you're showing me a scenic or lighting slide, and vice versa if I'm showing Mandy a really involved costume slide. Yes. Explanations are key. Showing a mix of finished work and process shots is helpful, and you should try for that as much as possible. I have a slide in a minute that'll show you ways you can accommodate that balance better. Um, this is from one of our students, Hannah, an example of a lighting portfolio. Here you see all of the elements that we have talked about. We have progress photos. We have another progress photo, but pretty close to the finished end result. And I didn't include it, but I believe she had a separate slide with the actual finished final thing on stage under lighting. We have the credits that we talked about. Format's very, very legible. I know I say neutral colors. To me, this blue is light enough and neutral enough that I can buy it. Navy blue does fall into neutral territories, so I think blue is the one pigment you might be able to play around with a little bit, in my opinion. Um, so the next 3 slides, I have a few different types of plates from the same individual. So this is from one of our students, Bailey Taylor, for her costume design work as an associate designer. So she was responsible for specific characters within the broader production of Macbeth at MSU Denver. So what I love about this slide is on the left, you see some research photos. She should drag that one photo down. You see some rough sketches about how she thinks this might be executed. You see her rendering, and then you see on that very same slide what it looked like on stage. I see immediately the scope of what Bailey did here, right? In terms of design portfolios, it can be tricky because, if she were designing all the characters in this musical, that's a whole 25 slide presentation. That's your whole portfolio. So I like to kind of have maybe one or two broader overview slides like, hey, here's all the renderings together. Here's a lot of production photos about what this looked like. And then maybe for the people I spent the most time and effort on, I'll include some more specific individual slides to show that work. Also from Bailey, a costume technology slide because Bailey does both design and tech. You'll notice, of course, we have our credits in the top right. We have our title. We have just Natasha Dress, but she should have probably included specifically that she was the stitcher for that, which she might on the next slide. Has a bit of context for what the dress was, what it needed to do, some photos on stage, some photos on a form. So these are all sort of finished product things, which are wonderful to see. And then on her next slide, she has a lot more detail about what her process actually looked like for that. So she's showing pinning, stitching, fitting things, looking at things on sleeves, some close-ups. And so I personally feel that if you can't fit everything you want to on one slide, just make a second slide. It's so fine. Especially if you're building a costume. A lot of costume builds are really, really, really complex. And I would actually rather see more detail. Because if I just saw this first slide, it's not telling me what I need to know. Conversely, if I only saw this second slide with like one production photo crammed into it, it probably wouldn't make me super happy either. Um, Always, this is a very costume designer specific thing, but if you're a costume person, you should get specific consent if you're including fitting photos in your portfolio. Most actors tend to be fine with it. You could also consider if they're on the fence about it, like, hey, could I maybe edit your face out and just show the garment on your body? This is kind of a different type of portfolio from another one of our students in his work as a wardrobe supervisor. So what's interesting about, excuse me, that sort of work, very similar to stage management, you're not really making your own physical product. You are organizing, you are managing. Um, the best way I think to show that is through the scope of your paperwork. Can be helpful. Again, you should always have show. This is what I did. This is where it was. These are the credits. Couple of photos included in there to draw some visual interest. Because again, if a person is in this interview at this point, we're on slide 18 of 22, and I know nothing about costumes. I don't want to see the paperwork. I just want to see this.
I don't want to just look at paperwork.
No.
So not
Uh-huh.
interested.
And even if it is a
This is
room full
nice.
of, yeah, because it shows different things. And here's where I think that it can be advantageous to have a printout of a high quality printout of your portfolio in a physical interview context to be able to show. And hey, if you can't quite see this on the screen, feel free to look at this. Um, 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 um. Okay, so those are the examples. I'm gonna go through all of them again, just so you can kind of get an overall visual of what things look like. There's different ways to do it, but honestly, there's more similarities, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I really love when it comes to design, I really like the way that Bailey laid hers out so that you actually
Hmm.
do see an entire process rather than
Hmm.
seeing a bunch of research and
Yep.
then a bunch of renderings and then
Yep.
a bunch of costumes. Like I'm not making the
Hmm.
connections.
Yep.
And I think that that follows along with a lot of other kinds of design choices. It's nice to
Hmm.
see the process of specific things so that I can like reference that.
Yeah.
um, and then I would say, yeah, the breakouts on like those wardrobe ones and those electrics ones, like those are nice because then you can actually show the process photos and break it out a little bit
Hmm.
and be a little bit more detailed. But this is a really nice plate, and as a non-costumer, this tells me what I need to know about how Bailey works through a process.
Absolutely. It tells us a lot of things. I think the most important, they know how to work that process. They know on a fundamental level about research, about renderings, about what it looks like realized. Um, there are contexts where people maybe go to an undergrad program where there aren't enough faculty. Maybe they're not getting as much specific design training as they should. Saying that as someone whose undergrad program lacked a lot of those things, um, it's important to know and demonstrate that you have that standard process down. Because what we're talking about here, that research rendering into realized thing, that's not just a costume thing. That applies to all of the disciplines.
That is all disciplines. You could take this same exact thing and do lighting research. I don't really do renderings in my process, but
Hmm.
like you could take that lighting research and then maybe show some plot development kind of
Hmm.
things and then a
Hmm.
finished product or
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, there's other ways to do this very similar thing.
Yeah.
Or maybe you designed a very specific effect that you could like
Yep.
highlight in that kind of way.
And in terms of paperwork, a lot of the times for a costume designer, I don't want to see your paperwork. Maybe if I like know nothing about you and you have very few credits, like it can be good to see that you know how to do a costume plot, piece list, etc. At the end of the day, I don't want to see all of that in most circumstances. I don't think that's true for all disciplines. I feel like a lighting plot is generally an appropriate thing if you drafted the
The
plot as
lighting
a
lighting
designer.
paperwork, technical
Hmm.
direction, scenic paperwork, like that's
Yep.
all very important.
Yep.
There's a lot of safety issues involved in a lot of that.
Hmm.
But I would be more like for a designer, I'm not going to expect like the electrician paperwork, you know. Um, it depends on again, it depends on what job you're applying for. There's been so many places where I'm both the designer and the electrician. And so having both is very important. If I'm applying to a job, like when I applied to MSU Denver, it was important for me to have both because I was
Yep.
coming in as a designer and an electrician for the department. And so it's good to have that entire package.
Yeah.
So some of this you can curate based on the job that you're applying for or what kinds of things you're applying for. In general, I never send out electrician stuff because I'm generally applying as a designer.
Hmm.
But in this specific instance, I like, brought that paperwork as well.
Hmm. Indeed. Okay. Moving on, we are getting to the end of it. So bringing it all back. General tips for success. Some of these are reminders that I've mentioned before. Some might be new. Again, updating your portfolio regularly, living document, take photos, take photos, take photos, take photos. Get a tattoo of it on your hand if you need to. Just remember to take your photos. There was a time in grad school where I made it the background on my phone just said take photos. I'm serious, because otherwise I wasn't going to remember.
That's such
And
a
my
good
portfolios,
idea.
yeah, no, right? And now iOS is so fancy that I think I can like even have it show that background like from 9 to 5 and a more normal background different times.
Something Emily did
Um,
in the scene shop that I think is great is she started like a Google Drive for the whole
yeah.
shop that
Hmm.
everyone can dump photos into.
Hmm.
And so if you forget, well, maybe someone else that you were working with remembered and
Yeah,
they're
ask your
all in one
friends.
place. So
Don't be
like
embarrassed to ask your friends.
yeah, ask your friends, make a team. There was my computer got stolen in grad school and I this was back before Dropbox was super strong and so I like mailed a hard drive around the country
Hmm.
to get
Hmm.
process
Hmm.
photos from everyone else. Like ask your
That's
friends.
incredible, actually. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Mailing the hard drive. I love that. Um, 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 yes, portfolio regularity. The other thing that you said there that I hadn't mentioned, we talked about um, exporting as PDF, all of those things in terms of file management. Your file, if it's like a PowerPoint or something like that, should not just be saved locally to your computer. Google Sheets does it automatically for you. And actually, Microsoft has autosave functionality built into OneDrive and everything now. Even if you don't have an auto backup going, when you are done working, you must put it somewhere in the cloud, whether it's Google Drive, whether it's Dropbox, OneDrive, whatever it may be, iCloud. Um, I know that this seems obvious, but like losing all of your work is really painful and not fun. So
Yeah.
backups.
Well, and
Um,
on the flip side of that, also, when you are going to interview, download a copy and have it
Yeah,
saved locally.
absolutely.
Because if you're going to, say, conference and you're going to participate in portfolio reviews or job interviews at conference, there is no internet service.
Yep.
So rely on the cloud for long-term storage. Do not rely on cloud on the
Mhm.
day of.
That is a great follow up to that. Yeah, you should have both for sure. For sure. And great plug too if you're going to the national conference in Long Beach in March. What's the acronym? Portfolio, resume, interview, materials, preparation, I believe. PRIMP,
Yeah, print.
PRIMP. I don't think you're
It's a
even,
lot of fun.
yeah, you don't have to register to get your portfolio resume looked at. Lots of experts from
Resume
all around the
doctor and stuff,
industry.
you don't have to. I think the actual portfolio reviews, you
Oh,
do
you
sign
do.
up for.
Sure.
Hmm.
They also do, I was reading tenure package reviews and things for the academics in the crowd. Lots of great resources. Um, we've said this before, but I'll say it again. You should only be including your best and your most relevant work. Um, there's a weird, like 5 years of your career where maybe you're finishing school, you're just getting out of school, where maybe you don't quite have a full portfolio's worth of really strong work. So maybe there's some flexibility, but what you should never have is bad work or poor work, work that doesn't make you look good. I would rather see a 5 slide portfolio of killer work than a 20 slide portfolio of five killer slides and 15 slides. That's just me.
And it's so hard to make that first cut, especially when it's like a
Hmm.
project you were really proud of.
Hmm.
Like you have that one college thing, you were so proud of the work, looks bad. So sorry, friend.
Get
Cut.
eyes on it. Get eyes that are not yours on it is my
And
recommendation.
let someone be really honest with
Hmm.
you. Yeah.
Mandy did that for me last year. It helped me take a lot of shit off of my website that just didn't need to be there anymore. Because it's like,
Hmm.
I still
It's
feel
time.
that this work is important to me as a person and artist, but this outsider is like, this looks bad. And to me, that's enough to take it out.
That's when you leave it on your website on a
Yeah,
hidden page so that you can enjoy it
exactly.
at any time that you want to, but you don't let other people see it.
I'm not sure I mentioned it on the website slide, but yeah, I have a lot of archive pages too that are not public can access, but I still have them for me and my gratification.
Yep, same.
Um, Portfolios, we have said this and we'll say it again, always tailor to your individual job application. You need to be considering the skills you need for that role and then show that hiring manager you have those skills. I would say to make sure that you are starting and finishing with exceptionally strong work. First impressions and final impressions matter the most. I've heard people say best work first, best work last. I've heard it vice versa. I don't think it really matters. It's all subjective anyway. But making sure you have work that you're really proud of to start off with when you're presenting is then, hey, I love this. I'm excited. I can get really engaged and connect with my audience. And then, of course, at the end, finishing again with something that leaves your interviewers going, wow, that's really cool. This person is a great technician, great artist, great costume designer, whatever it may be. Showing versatility within your skill set is great. For instance, what I was saying about design work, I'm not applying for a tech position, but I'm going to include a couple of technician slides because I need them to know that I am a competent technician as well, because as a technician, I will always prefer working with designers that can sew. But staying focused on your specialty within that, it's a balance. In terms of length, you're going to want to shoot around 20 minutes. Rarely would more than 30 minutes be appropriate. There are certain contexts, maybe a grad school interview if they're getting really comprehensive, maybe like a tenure track faculty interview. I don't know, depending on what they are asking for. But in those circumstances, they tend to ask for very, very specific things with specific timelines on them. When you're asked to present a portfolio in an interview, you're not always given strong guidance on how much time you have. So I try to have a couple of versions, not necessarily different slideshows, but different speaker notes maybe to make my presentation shorter or longer. Oftentimes, interviews might be scheduled in an hour block if you're lucky. So 30 minutes for interview, 15, 20 for presentation, the rest for questions and transition. Sometimes it'll be 45, sometimes it'll be 30. So 30-minute interview, you'll maybe have 10 minutes to show your work. So there are times you have to make those adjustments on the fly and decide in the moment. And that can just be as simple as, I'd love to talk to you more about this slide, but considering our time constraints for the interview, I'll let you look at that on your own time. My portfolio is always available at blah, blah, blah.com, right? Attention spans are short, very short. Watching your overall pacing and including plenty of flashy production photos to break up any of your text slash paperwork heavy slides. Um, Final reminder, thing you should remember, portfolio should be standing on its own. What I mean by that is it needs to make sense. It needs to communicate what you're trying to communicate with it when you are not there in the room to present it. You got to make sure that your written explanations are clear and that your visual storytelling is informative. You should consider including a resume slide on your portfolio. It's not something I always do, but especially if you're sending it out and you're not sure if you'll get an interview or not, it can be nice for people when they're reviewing your materials to not have to open a different document. So consider that maybe. Formatting reminders and best practices. I say these with all the love in my heart, and I know I've been saying there's flexibility at a certain extent. You gotta stick with the conventions. Again, we've said this. Clearly legible font, sans serif font. What does sans serif mean? It means if you look at that T in formatting, it doesn't have the little tiny lines on either side of it. The reason for this, many scientific studies about it. Much easier for the human eye to read a sans serif font than a serif font. And in fact, in terms of digital accessibility, which is something that we as public employees in Colorado and educators in the public education sector, all of our things have to be digitally accessible. And sans serif fonts or sorry, serif fonts like Times New Roman, which used to be the standard, is almost impossible for people with dyslexia to read. So keeping that in mind, I know like weirdly dozens of people with dyslexia. Why would you cut out this percentage of the population and prevent them from seeing your work in the best light? Neutral background color, I won't go on that diatribe again, but please just don't like come in with a hot pink background with like leopard print. It's not gonna do what you want it to. Text color should also be neutral and it should have a sufficient contrast with the background. So say if I made this font a gray too, I could probably make it like one shade away from the black and still be okay. But if my background and my foreground slash text are too close to each other, I'm not going to be able to read it effectively, especially from a distance. Intentional spacing, avoiding clutter is important. You don't necessarily need to fill every inch. I'm personally the kind of person who does fill most of my slides and I do crazy things and crop and layer photos to get what I want on the page. But when I look at them, they're clearly arranged in an intentional way by someone that put a lot of thought into it and that like has a design background and training. So different thoughts. Um, excuse me. Using high resolution photographs and videos only. Keep an eye on when you are uploading things to the cloud for long-term photo storage, that whatever you're uploading through is not throttling the quality of your photos down to a certain threshold. For instance, I have Google Photos on my phone for like my casual stuff that auto syncs and uploads. However, that automatically reduces some of the resolution. And so I make sure for production photos that I'm always saving them directly and that the file size is not changing. Don't accidentally compress your stuff. It will look bad later. Always export as a PDF. I won't go on that diatribe again, but please do not send me your PowerPoint. Do not send me a link to your Google Slides. Especially do not send me a link to your Google Slides if I don't have access permissions. I should never be having to email a candidate to ask for access to their portfolio. That's no. Naming your document something easily sortable. This seems like a little thing, but you guys, it is that delineation between a true professional and a student, to be really honest with you. If my title says document 4, okay, if my title says Sullivan Costume Design Portfolio 2026, I know immediately in my millions of files, oh, that's this portfolio I'm looking for. Great. Review, and review some more. Ask your friend to read it. Ask your mom to read it. Ask the guy at the grocery store to read it. I don't care. Just avoid sending out materials with mistakes at all costs. There are some people in the world, myself included, one of my superpowers is I see typos like immediately and they're very glaring to me. And so for me, I spend hours and hours and hours and hours on every resume I send out. Like, Oh my God. Oh my God. Up, extra space here, extra parentheses here, little typo here. Hey, did this spacing between these two lines get a little bit weird? Things that don't necessarily seem that important really do elevate it into that professional tier. And at the end of the day, if I see a really well formatted, organized proofread portfolio, um, and a not so well proofread portfolio with similar qualities of work, I am always throwing the poorly organized portfolio out the door.
Yeah, it's that attention to detail, and it's
Yep.
super important, especially in our line of work. Like if you are a sloppy technician who doesn't tape their cables down nicely,
Yep.
and if you don't trim off all of your thread ends or something, like that is stuff that like I shouldn't have to tell you. And if I can tell in both your photos and in your attention to detail and your formatting and stuff that I am going to have to tell you those things constantly, I'm gonna go with the person I don't have to tell
Yep.
um to pay attention to details.
hmm That's a great point. And read that job posting in a great detail as well. Make sure you know what they're asking for. For instance, I ran a national search with probably 60 people that applied to it. Very specifically asked in the posting that you include your CV, which is fancy word for a resume, just longer resume, your cover letter, your portfolio, and a list of three references. I cannot tell you, at least 25 people simply did not include any references in their materials.
They
Very
were
strange.
probably on
I
the bottom of the resume, but when it's asked in that manner, you make it
hmm
separate.
Oh, but I'm talking like they weren't even on the resume.
Oh,
Like weird
mm,
things. Like people just they'll blaze by things and just be like, they can ask me for references later. You
yeah, even if
should
you're batch applying to a bunch of things, you need to read each one and make sure
yeah.
you're actually covering it.
hmm
I've been in job interviews where they specifically did not want a full design portfolio. Like they did not want a
hmm
body of work like what we've
Yeah.
been talking about. They wanted a single project,
Oh
like a
yeah.
presentation on a single project.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, well, hold on while I just go make a whole new presentation, you know?
Mhm. But it'd be
But
really
some,
embarrassing to show up with your standard presentation because you
it
didn't
would
read
be.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So make
People
sure
that
you're reading those things.
People that don't pay attention to details rarely have extended careers in the theater, just as a general rule. Great, 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 great. Okay, it's my last slide. How are we on time? Oh, we're
Yay.
doing great.
We're doing great.
Wonderful. Okay, in terms of presenting your work, none of anything I've talked about here matters if you aren't presenting your work confidently and effectively, right? You have to bridge that gap between what is on the screen or on the paper, using your words to really demonstrate yes, who you are as a technician, what your skills are, what you're capable of, but also who you are as a person. Like, will this person be fun to work with? Not even fun, like enjoyable to work with. Being kind and being engaging in an interview really speaks volumes about you and how much someone might want to work with you. So keep that in mind. You'll always want to be rehearsing, probably several times, out loud, not in your head. It has to be out loud. I know that it's kind of hard to do actually to sit there and like talk to yourself, but you have to make yourself do it. I sometimes like to record myself and take notes throughout the thing, timing yourself both when you are practicing and discreetly when you are presenting. I'm going to share a little thing. I actually am in speaker view. I just showed you the top of it. I have a timer going up here actively at all times. So learn about PowerPoint speaker view. Um, Even if you are nervous, I have never not been nervous for a job interview in my life. And before I forget it, I've also never submitted the same resume to any job twice. Always different, slightly. Even if you're nervous, you absolutely must present yourself with confidence. You have to believe that you deserve the job. You deserve to be hired by X company, or that company is never ever going to hire you. Why would I hire you if you don't believe in your own work? No way. I know that that's difficult for people, especially there's a lot of technicians in the world that are not very people oriented necessarily, just not necessarily like the instantly sociable kind of thing. But at the end of the day, you really almost, what I tell students is if this doesn't come naturally to you, you need to create a character. I know that we are not actors, And I'm not saying that you should be lying slash presenting a completely different version of yourself in an interview, but it has to be almost an elevated version of the best thing that you are, right? The way I present now, the way I teach in class, the way I am in interviews, those are all very different to how I am at a casual conversation with Mandy, you know?
We
Um,
have a coworker who talks frequently about their clown self. And what I heard her say
okay.
actually last week in a show with actors is she's like, you need to be prepared. Your clown self needs to be prepared for how to respond when something goes wrong on stage.
Hmm.
You know, someone drops a thing. How does your character, your clown self, respond in that moment? Not you, the actor, who's like, crap, something fell down on stage. How does your clown self solve that? How
Yeah.
does your character solve that? And I think that can really come into play here too. Like you need that like heightened version of yourself. Oh, this goes wrong. What does my confident self do? What does
Yep.
this person do?
Yep. If you can't see yourself with that kind of confidence in the room, make someone up who does and stick to it. Um, this is true in like networking context as well. You just have to have and hell, even like a first design meeting with someone you've never worked with before as a director, you just have to have a persona that is approachable, that is true to you, but is something that other people respond well to. Some specifics in that being polite. Please say your pleases and thank yous. Like politeness is falling out of fashion, and really it makes a big difference. Making eye contact and letting your passion shine through. The eye contact thing, I want to acknowledge that there's a bit of ableism inherent in that, that for a lot of neurodivergent folks, it can be difficult to make extended eye contact. Um, at the end of the day, as much as I acknowledge that and believe in that, there is a certain standard in the hiring process where if you are not presenting yourself in the way that we are talking about, it's not that they're going to say no to you because you are X, Y, or Z. They're saying no to you because it seemed like you weren't interested in being there and that you didn't seem confident in yourself. And so, even though it's difficult and there are limitations, as someone who is pretty neurodivergent myself, your only option, to be honest, if you want to have a consistent career in the theater, is to learn these conventions, learn how you need to present yourself. And if that means to you performing neurotypicalism, then great, that's fine. You don't need to do it at all once you get out of the interview room. You can be your whole normal self, but you get like 45 minutes to an hour to show someone the extent of who you are, and you need to stand out and you need to be approachable. Watching your filler words, as I just said, is my big one. Like is a big one. What's the other big one people say? I've heard a lot of, so on this project, we just sort of like drafted this pattern to be this to the 90, and then we kind of sort of like, I hear a lot of that. Just watch your language and be specific. This is what I'm talking about. When you record yourself and take notes, you can help eliminate a lot of that behavior. It's something that I'm trying to think. I've been probably talking in grand total for about 7 hours today between my three classes and some meetings and this. That's a lot of talking, you guys. And at a certain point, like your brain, especially at this time of day, it's like, oh God, I don't know what to say next. And so that's where those filler words come in. And you're not ever going to be perfect, but just watch them. I'm probably going to go watch this presentation when it's on YouTube and be like, stop saying Uh anyway, inviting questions about your work and anticipating likely questions ahead of time. You should never, ever, for one thing, go to a job interview without questions prepared for your interviewers, but you also shouldn't go without thinking about what kind of questions you might be asked. Lots of resources out there on the web in terms of interview questions. Always having several digital, so in the cloud, probably multiple cloud places on a thumb drive, backups of your portfolio, and ideally a physical copy as well. Again, very rarely are you going to be asked for that physical copy, but there are specific moments where it's helpful to have a physical sheet to refer to in addition to what's on the screen. Dressing appropriately for the job that you are interviewing for, but always closed-toed shoes. I'll start with the parentheses first. I'm saying always closed-toed shoes based on something my technical director said to me that, sorry about the sirens, at a job interview For a theater, you might, in fact, almost always will be going on a tour around their building through their production spaces. They can't take you on that tour if you're wearing stilettos, if you are wearing sandals. So you can have a cute shoe, just make sure it is also a functional shoe, a safe shoe that can do all the things in the theater. That's true even as a costume designer, right? Um, Shoe conventions are a little different in costume land in terms of safety, but if I'm on a tour at a theater, they're not just going to show me the costume things. They're probably going to want to take me around all of their venues and spaces. In terms of dressing appropriately, again, that's a thing that kind of feels like, is this reductive? Have we moved past this? Theater people in general, pretty much all, unless you're a costume designer or a certain type of director, you're wearing a lot of jeans, a lot of flannels, a lot of t-shirts, all of that. We're a very informal industry in general. However, dressing a little bit more formally indicates to your interviewer that you are taking this seriously. Like I put on a collared shirt. Mandy, how often do you see me in a collared shirt? Like once a month at
Like once a month.
most. Once
Special
a year,
occasion.
maybe. Yeah, special occasions. So I dress up a little bit for interviews. I'll dress up a little bit if I'm giving a presentation. I'll dress up if I'm going to the theater still. Um, and so what that looks like, I would just look into business casual. I can't do a whole presentation about what that is right now. In general, if you are mass presenting, shirt with a collar, please, pants, please, not shorts, tuck that in, have a belt, have a shoe that matches. That's it. If I'm presenting folks, you got lots more options. I personally would recommend more of like a, I don't know, pantsuit, jumpsuit situation rather than going the skirt route. For that same reason, like, what if they ask if you can pop up the ladder? You don't want to be in a skirt for that moment. Um, dun, 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 dun. Clean hairstyle. I don't personally have strong opinions about makeup, but if you usually wear makeup in your daily life, you'll probably want to be wearing makeup in the interview as well. Um, just presenting a version of yourself that is really clean and put together goes hand in hand with your clean, organized, intentional portfolio. I am making intentional choices about my portfolio. I am making intentional choices about how I am styling myself. And that means, God willing, I will make intentional choices as a designer, technician, employee, whatever it will be. Um, Okay, last point. Remember, you are building a narrative as to why I should hire you. You should never just be like thinking about your slides of individual projects out of context. You are trying to show your interviewers the overall scope of who you are, what you can do, and why you, and not somebody else, is the best person to fill their vacancy. Great. That was everything. Thank you so much for joining me. It was really great to get to talk about this. Had a lot of fun. If you have any questions at any point in time, please feel free to reach out about portfolios, about resumes, about use at Rocky Mountain, about costumes, about the meaning of life, anything you wish. I love getting emails. My email is right there. If you're listening on audio, it is csulli47 at msudenver.edu. And again, very special thanks to Brian Kelly and Emily Chancellor, my colleagues in the scenic area, for letting me use some of their materials to help develop this. And finally, shameless plug for our USITT Rocky Mountain Regional Section. If you want to learn more about us and what we do, watch our past digital discussions, and join us for any future events, I invite you to visit us at linktree/USITT Rocky Mountain. That is linktr.ee/USITT Rocky Mountain. Thank you again for joining us, and please let us know if you have any questions or any suggestions for future topics for us to present.
Thank you so much, Connor.
Yeah,
This is
thank you.
delightful. I hope that everybody has learned so much about portfolios and that you are all ready to go and like make your portfolio or
100%.
make it better, redo it.
Yeah.
The only other advice I would give is also look at other people's portfolios.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm. Hmm.
like if your school does portfolio reviews, like can you sit in on them? Watch as many as you can. Watch other people present. Go and watch people present at different events. Any sort of public place where you can see people's portfolios, you should do it. Ask your friends to see their portfolios, ask your professors, ask people who are 10 years ahead of you in their careers.
Yeah.
Ask ask everyone you can to see their portfolios. I have one that I haven't looked at in a little while, and I'm sure I could dust it off and let you look at it, you know.
Hmm.
Make sure you're taking that time. But thank you so much, Connor,
Yeah,
and
thank you,
I
Mandy.
hope everybody has a really great evening.